Welcome to another Out of Spec Reviews video. Welcome to a rainy Los Angeles, and welcome to a Porsche Taycan without a front motor. That's right, this is the rear-wheel drive, the base Taycan. Let's run through the spec, the options, and then we're going to take it for a hard blast in the rain up Angeles Crest, which I'm super excited about because I want to see how this car drives on limit with the reduction of a front motor. And of course, you need to be really careful up here when it rains because rock slides can happen. So we're going to be dodging rocks. We're going to be watching for oil on the road, and we're going to take it easy. But I do want to see how this car performs and drives up here in the hills. So we have the 2021 Taycan rear-wheel drive. It is actually just called the Taycan, simply that. We have a base price of $79,990. Then you have to add the $1,350 destination, but you do get the federal tax credit of $7,500. And if you're buying a Taycan, it's likely you qualify for the whole thing. 2 battery pack options you can get for this one. You can get a 79.2 kilowatt hour. That is gross capacity, not usable. And that has a 200-mile EPA range and 225 kilowatt peak charging speeds. This is the big battery, the 93.4 kilowatt hour that we know from Turbo and Turbo S. And this one can do 270 kilowatt peak charging, of course. It's EPA rated at 225 miles, which is slightly less than the 4S, but I just did the 70 mile per hour highway range test that I test every EV. And on the highway, keep in mind, which always gets less range for an EV, this did 293.3 miles from 100% to dead. So far surpassing the EPA range. With Taycan, you just need to completely ignore the EPA range ratings because it's just totally inaccurate. And actually, this went farther than the 4S I drove and tested, mostly because this one's probably on aero wheels and the 4S is on, that I tested was on 21-inch wheels. I did a Taycan 4S on aero wheels that we broke the Cannonball record with, and that one did about the same as the 21-inch car, but in 30-degree colder temperatures, maybe 40-degree colder temperatures. So that's impressive. Quick side note, because I know you're going to ask, the front trunk is the same size even with the removal of the front motor, but it's still pretty good. This one also does not have the power charge port, which helps for brake cooling, aerodynamics, and efficiency, of course. And let's see, 0 to 60 on this one is 5.1 seconds. You go a quarter mile, 0.2 seconds faster with the big battery than the small battery, but 0 to 60 remains unchanged. The large battery weighs 170 pounds more, but you get a, let's see, 87 horsepower bump. You go from 300 kilowatts to 350 kilowatt output here in the Performance Plus battery like this car, and that's apparently the same 0 to 60, which I find interesting. This one's painted in frozen berry metallic with a blackberry slate gray interior. It's $4,700 for this interior and $800 for the paint. Again, rear wheel drive. And let's just see some other stuff. This one has air suspension, rear steering. It's a German car, it's not a US spec car. So we're just gonna start in sport mode and talk a little bit about it going up the crest. We're gonna have to take it easy and watch for rocks because that guy just destroyed his wheel coming up here. So yeah, rocks all over the road. We're just going to watch. They actually had plow trucks running up and down here to push the rocks off the road, which is super interesting. So we're gonna keep an eye out for that. So, Taycan rear-wheel drive. We have, again, less weight on the front axle, less total power, but I have to say right off the bat, you put your foot down, yeah, we just got wheel spin. Like, it's fast. Like, you don't need any more power than this, I would say. Cruising around town on the highway, it doesn't die off its speed, benefit of that 2-speed transmission. This thing pulls and pulls and pulls. It's really awesome. Like I mentioned, this one has rear steering and has PASM standard, so we have some good suspension control here. I have the dampers dialed up into Sport right now. Sport Plus is probably a bit aggressive on this road. The thing that I like about Sport Plus, though, is it helps with battery cooling. So I'm going to turn the electric sport sound off, which I have dialed up into a hotkey button here on the screen. And let's see how this thing drives when we start putting our foot down a little bit. Cruising down the highway, I do want to mention that you do notice the reduction of noise of not having the front motor, which is really nice. Look at that, nice little angles coming out of these corners. Really is great to have that rear wheel drive. So reduction of noise on the front end, which is cool, but also for efficiency, you're not able to decouple the motor. Many people think in Taycan that the reason it gets such good highway efficiency, surpassing EPA, is because of the 2-speed transmission. That is totally inaccurate. In the EPA tests run the cars in key up setting, which is normal mode. And in normal mode, the 2 speeds always connected, as is the front motor. When you put the car in range mode, which doesn't affect driving performance, by the way, it just alters the way that the car distributes power. It actually physically decouples the rear motor and runs front wheel drive. That's why the car is so efficient. So what I wanted to see here with the 4S, with the rear wheel drive is, you know, how is that efficiency? Is it less or more than Taycan 4S because it can't decouple the rear motor? You have to use it. And the answer is, it's a staggeringly impressive range and efficiency and around town comfort and charging speed. We've already proven the Taycan is the best road tripping EV in terms of speed and power and charging power, I should say. That relationship between high speed efficiency and high charge rate means if you have to get from A to B, the Taycan is the fastest EV to do so. We've already proven it. So let's get going here. We have the car again dialed up into Sport Plus. Traction control is on, and it really does step in a lot and cut down the power on wide open throttle exits. The turn in feels really good, although that's mostly down to the rear steer, but look at the power coming out of here. Now you can get on the throttle and it gives you quite a bit of power, but if you stay into it, it feeds in more and more. It's not the most immediate power shove like you get in a Turbo or Turbo S Taycan, unless you really smack your foot down. But if you roll into full throttle, the car rolls into its power delivery. It's actually really smooth, really nice to modulate, and it's actually kind of nice. You know, when you drive a Turbo or Turbo S Taycan, or even like a Model S Performance, for example, you smack your foot down, you get all the power, that's all the car can give, and then it has to derate a little bit. Here, we put our foot down and it builds. It's constantly increasing, which is a fantastic feeling of not necessarily neck-snapping, uncomfortable acceleration, but it gives you the sense that things are happening as you keep your foot into it, and it actually encourages you to keep your foot planted. Here's where we're getting the power. It's nice. You can even watch the power gauge creep up a little bit. So we've learned the power is fine. This one, again, 350 kilowatt output, almost 500 horsepower, 498, something like this. And that's plenty to move this car. It's quite heavy, like 5,000 pounds, but you do lose, again, 220 pounds over the 4S, and you gain 170 pounds for the big battery, which the 4Ss all mostly have right now in the US. I'm a big fan of this large battery, but I have not tested the smaller battery, but it sounds good. It sounds like you're getting 25-mile EPA reduction. You're getting a slight power decrease, but also a weight decrease, so your acceleration is nearly the same. And that might be the one to go for. 225 kilowatt charging is not slow either. And the 5 to 80% charging curve on both batteries is 22.5 minutes, which is more than adequate. Let's just get it going. So we get a little bit of play on the rear axle, little angles that are coming out and having some fun, which is exactly what I want in a Porsche. It's actually really fun. You get the front end that just turns in no matter what you do. There's not a hint of understeer in this car. You put your foot down and it just angles out, and man, does it just freaking rip. Coming up into the fog here, temperatures are creeping down into the 30s. This is rough conditions up in Angeles Forest, certainly the worst I've ever driven, but a great way to test, again, the limit dynamics of the Taycan, especially on power delivery on corner exit, which is exactly what I want to see. And yeah, I love this drivetrain because you can really utilize full acceleration quite often. And that's not to say it's slow, it's just to say that the car is approachable on a road like this. You get in the Turbo S, you really need to plan your straightaways because that car just shoots from A to B massively. Now, don't get me wrong, I love that, and I think that is so cool. But is it worth double the price or triple the price depending on spec? I'm not so sure. I think it's actually, this might be the enthusiast choice to get the rear-wheel drive Taycan. Great efficiency, no hit there, less noise, especially this car without the glass roof is seriously quiet in here, quite a bit of padding up above my head. And yeah, check a look at these rock slides here. We're just gonna try to avoid all of that. really nice. And this color combination, everyone's been coming up to it and they actually love it. I'm so shocked because I like it mostly because this is a weird spec and it's a press car and they can get a little crazy with the color combo. But actually now living with it for the last couple days, I'm starting to like it. And I love this blackberry interior. I would highly recommend someone to spec this interior. Look at this, we have snow and ice up here, crazy. That's wild. We're on Michelin Pilot Sport 4s, which is not a winter tire by any stretch of the imagination. Look at that, we just climbed elevation and we're in a winter wonderland. I feel like I'm back in Colorado. We have slush on the road, ice on the road. We're gonna take it easy now, of course. Wow, it's beautiful up here. And look, we don't need a 4S to get up and around in the snow. You can see I'm not nervous to get this thing around. It's all totally fine, but I do have to go pretty slow because I can just see the slush built up on the road here. So we're gonna back it off of Sport Plus into sport mode. And I think we don't need to get too crazy with this review. I've already driven Taycan a ton. We've driven Taycan together on this channel, I believe. And it's honestly pretty much the same. Now Porsche says it will do 265 kilowatt regen still with the rear wheel drive in the press release. I don't buy it. I think it does not do 265 kilowatt regen. Maybe it does, but there's no way that you can do that much regen to the rear axle without it really messing something up. Should we do a couple skids in the parking lot in a rear wheel drive Taycan? I think so. Let's lift up the suspension. Let's go over here. We got to do a couple ice donuts. Let's turn traction control, PSM Sport. Nope, we want to go PSM off. So let me just hold this down. PSM Sport, PSM turned off. Let's put the dampers and the car down. Okay, time for some donuts in the Taycan. It's really freaking easy to do, of course. No problem. Look at this, full drifty drifts. You get tons of steering lock on the front. Nothing better than some ice donuts, right, friends? And the rear wheels, you can just hear from the rear motor spinning up. Interestingly, PSM is off, but it actually just, the light just flashed there. So it's not true off in this car. I guess they don't want the electric motor spinning up too far. It's actually hard to modulate an electric car in a sideways position with too much power. And I gotta say, this passes the donut test quite well. So, I've enjoyed driving the rear wheel drive. I think it's a no compromise solution, seriously. And I think for the price, if you're looking at Model S or Taycan, for me, I've driven both, obviously. I think this is the car for me. If you're really into the tactile feedback of driving, if you like road tripping with an adventure, because you know, you're relying on the CCS charging networks, which I do quite often, and that's a tough thing to do, then this is definitely the car. Definitely the car. It's really find a road trip. Like I said, I've done a cross-country trip in Taycan, and I think this is where we will end the video. What an awesome machine, and you lose nothing with the rear wheel drive. I would highly suggest it, but stay easy on the options. Try and keep it under 100 grand. That's the sweet spot.